We know that drugs and addiction are not just personal problems. Around the world, drugs have been pushed onto whole communities by very powerful groups, mafias, cartels, even governments. But one of the biggest examples of this happened in China almost 200 years ago, when the British Empire forced opium onto the Chinese people. And the way China fought back gives us lessons that we can still learn from today. Now, back in the 1800s, Britain was buying huge amounts of tea from China. China demanded silver as their payment, whether it was for their tea, silk, or their porcelain. And that started to drain British silver reserves. But there was a problem. China didn't want to buy British products in return. To fix this, the British turned to something that they knew would make money, and that was opium. The British East India Company grew opium in Bengal and other parts of India also. And then they smuggled that into China and also traded it across Southeast Asia. They knew that it would sell. Millions of Chinese people became addicted. Families were broken, work and farming collapsed, and China started to weaken. Chinese leaders, when they realized the damage that it was causing, they decided to act. So in 1839, the first Opium War began. A Chinese official named Commissioner Lin Zheng, I think, wrote a letter to Queen Victoria and actually asked why Britain would sell a drug to China that they had banned in their own country. Britain ignored him. The Zheng government destroyed opium shipments at Canton. The British became so pissed at this, sly as always, that they secretly called in their navy. And unfortunately, China just wasn't prepared. They lost that war. And they were forced to sign a treaty called the Treaty of Nanjing in 1842, giving Hong Kong to Britain and also opening their ports to foreign traders. And then things got worse. In the Second Opium War, which happened between 1856 and 1860, Britain came back, and this time with France. And they demanded even more rights to sell opium. China lost again. The invaders looted and burnt Beijing's summer palace, and millions of Chinese people stayed trapped in addiction. The country was divided, occupied, and humiliated. In fact, this period, up until 1949, is known in China as the Century of Humiliation. Of course, the British East India Company made massive profits. Families like the Jardine Mathesons built wealth that still exists today from that trade. Even in the Americas, rich families got involved. The Delano family, who are the ancestors of US President Franklin D. Roosevelt, were part of the opium trade in China.
So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So Western wealth was partly built on Chinese suffering, same as they did with Africa. By 1949, after years of foreign invasion, civil war and addiction, China was near collapse. But when Mao Zedong and the communists came to power, they declared war on opium again. Drug dealers were punished, addicts were forced into treatment, and farmers were banned from growing poppies. Within a few years, an epidemic that had lasted a century was finally ended. And there's no denying it was harsh, but it worked. The message was very clear. China would not wait for others to solve their problems. They took it on themselves. And I think that's the lesson for us. In Africa, we still face new forms of imperialism. Maybe not exactly through opium, although we do have a major drug problem, but also through debt and land issues and cheap labor. The reality is nobody's coming to save us. No one is going to rescue us. The British didn't go there to save China. They went there to make a profit. Change only came when the Chinese stood up and made sacrifices themselves. That is exactly what real change means. It means sacrifice. It means giving up short-term pleasures to build a better future. The Chinese did it, and within a generation, they turned that humiliation into the strength that we see today. So the question is, are we willing to do the same? Are we willing to sacrifice today so that 50 years from now, our kids don't look back at us and say, they did nothing for us? So the choice is ours. Either we stay comfortable in our misery, or we fight and we do the difficult work so that our kids can have a better future. There is no other option. On that note, don't forget to like, to subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the next video. Catch you guys in the next one.